Imagine if every single dollar of certain government spending had to be publicly justified before it's even spent. Well, that's pretty much the core idea behind Executive Order 14222, which was signed on February 26, 2025. In this explainer, we're going to dive in and deconstruct exactly what this new mandate means for federal agencies, their contracts, and, their everyday operations.
Right out of the gate, Section 1 lays out the mission. And you got to pay attention to the key words here: transformation, transparent, and accountable. This tells you that the order isn't just about some minor administrative tweaks. No, it's being framed as a pretty fundamental push for a more direct line of sight between the taxpayer and how their money actually gets spent. So that sounds pretty ambitious, right? But how does the order plan to turn those goals into reality? Well, it all starts by building a whole new framework for what's called discretionary spending. Let's break down who and what falls under this new mandate.
Okay, first things first, we've got to get our heads around this key phrase: covered contracts and grants. This is the order's main target: discretionary spending on federal contracts, grants, and loans. But what's not on that list is just as important. The order specifically carves out direct aid to people, things like Social Security or Medicare. It also excludes spending for the military, law enforcement, immigration, and intelligence. This really narrows the focus and tells you exactly what lane the order is operating in.
So at the very heart of this new framework is a simple but honestly really powerful idea. Every payment has to be justified. And this isn't just a suggestion. It's a brand new required process for tracking and explaining where the money is going. So how does this work in practice? The order lays out a pretty clear 5-step process. It starts with building a centralized tech system to record every single payment. Then, and this is the key part, before any payment gets approved, the employee responsible has to submit a written justification. This creates a checkpoint, and it gives the agency head the power to hit pause on any payment that seems questionable. And finally, to complete that transparency loop, these justifications are supposed to be posted publicly. You can just imagine how this might change the daily workflow for a lot of government employees.
And you can see this logic isn't just a one-off thing. The justification mandate isn't only for contracts. They're applying the exact same system to what the order calls non-essential travel. So before an employee can travel for a conference on the taxpayer's dime, an official has to enter a written reason why. It's the same principle of accountability, just aimed at a different type of spending.
Now, beyond creating these new long-term systems, the order also mandates a series of immediate, rapid-fire actions. We can kind of call it the 30-day blitz. This is where the order shifts from planning for the future to immediate intervention. 30 days, that's it. That is the aggressive timeline given to every single agency head for a massive government-wide review of spending and policies. We're not talking about some long-term study that's going to sit on a shelf here. This is meant to be an urgent top-to-bottom audit that produces results in less than a month.
This blitz has 3 core components. Starting on day 1, agencies had to start reviewing all of their existing covered contracts and grants. At the exact same time, they were ordered to conduct a full review of their internal contracting policies and the people who manage them. And then there's this one, which is pretty striking. A 30-day freeze was placed on all government employee credit cards, a move that would definitely have an immediate impact on daily operations.
The order also got really specific about the priorities within this blitz. The contract review was supposed to zero in on funds going to educational institutions and foreign entities to search for potential waste, fraud, and abuse. During that review, agencies also had to stop issuing new contracting officer warrants. That's basically the official authority to sign contracts. And that credit card freeze, it had exceptions, but only for truly critical needs like disaster relief.
All right, so the audit scope isn't limited to just cash and contracts. It also takes a pretty hard look at the government's physical footprint, specifically its massive portfolio of real estate. And this property overhaul came with another set of really tight deadlines. Within just 7 days, agencies had to hand over an accurate inventory of all their property. By day 30, they needed to have identified any rights they had to terminate existing leases. And by day 60, the General Services Administration, think of them as the government's landlord, had to submit a plan to get rid of any property that was deemed no longer needed.
Now, we've covered a lot about what the order does apply to, but it's just as important to understand what and who it does not apply to. The fine print contains several key exemptions.
Okay, so this order does not apply to a few key groups: law enforcement officers, Customs and Border Protection, and Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
It also excludes the uniformed services. And, as you'd probably guess, anything involving classified information is also exempt. And then there's this interesting catch-all at the end that allows an agency head to exempt any other contract or part of their agency, as long as they do it in writing. So to bring it all together, Executive Order 1422 is really built on three main pillars. First, you've got this new system of public justification for payments and travel. Second, an immediate and rapid 30-day review of existing contracts and policies. And third, a multi-stage overhaul of how the government manages its real estate. And all of this brings us to the big question, right? When you have such aggressive timelines and these huge, sweeping reviews mandated across the entire federal government, what are the immediate ripple effects going to be? How does an order like this actually play out across agencies, from federal procurement all the way to employee morale?